was a chapter of Disney's history for about a decade in the late 70s and early 80s where they made a series of seemingly uncharacteristically dark films. Today's microgenre are the dark Disney movies. Now, one could easily make the argument that Disney has always had a certain amount of darkness in its stories by virtue of the stories themselves. Bambi's mother dying is heart-wrenching, even Mufasa's death in The Lion King is pretty sad, and of course the nature of the Grimm's fairy tales lend themselves to darkness, even if Disney cleaned them up substantially. The Wicked Queen in Snow White is still pretty terrifying. Regardless, Disney as a brand and a studio is really synonymous with family values and G-rated movies and corporate softball movies. Independent from the animated movies, there are the gimmick comedies of the 60s and 70s, the adventure movies with pirates like Treasure Island or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or Davy Crockett. Even feel-good football movies like Remember the Titans are more Disney in their tone and feel than these films we're about to cover. That's why this strange patch of movies in this limited window of time really stand out as the dark era. And even that is overstating it. It's not as though Disney wasn't releasing other family-friendly movies in between these ones. The higher-ups and maybe fans of Disney movies might have not really appreciated them at the time or felt that they strayed too far off the Disney mission, but I think most of them have aged pretty well. If not state-of-the-art, bleeding-edge, archetypal blockbuster filmmaking, then at the very least, incredibly unique and intriguing works that seem to defy the corporate identity of Disney as a brand to some degree. And we'll just do them all in chronological order so we can feel the progression of them as they get released. I was tempted to include Child of Glass, which is a Disney TV movie from 1977, as our starting point. Disney did a fair amount of made-for-TV features in the 70s, and many of their theatrical productions would end up serialized and recut for a TV presentation, so Bedknobs and Broomsticks or The Shaggy Dog would end up slotted into the world of Disney on TV. It's about a family that moves into an old house in the antebellum South and are haunted by the ghost of a little French girl.
Now, Mama, what kind of a weird place are you dragging us off to?
We are not dragging you off to any place. Your father and I have purchased a perfectly astonishing example of authentic antebellum architecture.
I know that sounds like a joke because out of all the restless spirits you would imagine in the South, a little girl who lost her dolly doesn't seem all that serious. They want to talk about tragic history of the antebellum South, and they skip over anything important, like a Republican politician being asked about the Civil War.
In the fall of 1862, when the old man went insane and hung himself in the hayloft of the barn. All right.
Actually, there's no mention of black people at all. There are no black characters either, not even in the background hardly at all. Black people just don't exist in this world until about an hour in. That was the most screen time they get. Sorry to start with an awkward moment, but I didn't choose the South for the setting and then tiptoe around the biggest topic related to it. I just have to acknowledge it, otherwise I'm gonna feel dirty. Anyway, let's not spend too much time here, but to make my case for including a TV movie in this list, try to think of the last time you saw a Disney movie that ends with a creepy old man chasing two young children through a cemetery at night, and there's no comedy, and it's made for TV no less. As a remake or reimagining of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but set in space, The Black Hole tries to balance the family-friendly fare of silly R2-D2-inspired robots with the ideas and machinations of their insane host, their Nemo character, who's so obsessed with the idea of traversing a black hole that he turns his entire crew into robot slaves. That edgy, sinister vibe of the movie makes it feel more like a proto-Event Horizon, but the silly forced comedy relief robots hold us in a strange limbo between tones. Robert Forster is our hero guy, with Anthony Perkins and Ernest Borgnine riding shotgun. The movie production was a labored one, taking years of rewrites to get going. At the time, it was cited as the most expensive production Disney had ever attempted. It wasn't seen as a financial success or a critical success, but it has since grown a cult following. I think for its bizarre mix of mismatched tones, it's a pretty enjoyable Disney anomaly. I talk about it a little more in my series on all the various incarnations of Captain Nemo on screen, called The Mysterious Nemo, which you can find in my Cinechronology playlist. Here we have our second ghost story, this time based on the novel by Florence Engel Randall from 1976. This movie shares a fair amount in common with Child of Glass, but doesn't have the embarrassing history to the story. This is about a family that moves into a new house that has a dark history to it. Strange things happen, the children are being whispered to by ghosts and end up uncovering a decades-long mystery about a girl who went missing. There are only two actors that I recognized watching it. Bette Davis plays the missing girl's mother, and the lead actress, Holly Lynn Johnson, who's best known for being a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only, which also released the same year in 1980. There are other people of note in the cast like Carol Baker and even Kylie Richards. This belongs on the list as it has no lighthearted moments or jokes or typical Disney tone. Lighthearted isn't the right term. I mean no silliness, nothing to break the reality of the world established on screen, so there's no relief or escape hatch emotionally that would disrupt the tone. It's a truly respectable effort. There's no better example of this than in the two alternate endings featured on the DVD special features. The first shows the actual Watcher as this great puppet, and then he snatches Holly Lynn Johnson and disappears only to return after a few minutes, bringing the missing girl with her, only fully grown now. They took that all out for a more subdued and less fantastic ending that better matches the tone of the rest of the film. I love this alternate ending, but they chose the more consistent footage and tone. The pedigree of the film has to be chalked up to credit for the director John Hogue. Hogue's filmography boasts a bunch of cool and gnarly grindhouse classics like Twins of Evil, Legend of Hell House, Dirty Mary and Crazy Larry. He made box office smashes with other Disney movies like Escape from Witch Mountain and Return to Witch Mountain. He's a career tradesman that was involved with the Emma Peel Avengers TV series. He worked with Hammer Horror and even a terrible Howling sequel, Part 4. Let's just say, it's no marsupials. But despite all that, the movie never reached its audience with the box office. Now, there was also a remake in 2017 that was made for TV, directed by Melissa Joan Hart and featuring Angelica Houston. It suffers pretty badly from a limited budget to the point of not being able to afford to even shoot night scenes, reportedly using a special day-for-night filter. Everything is bright and colorful, and it's too bad since Hart was reportedly a big fan and even filmed a few shots on her phone to complete the production. This version is a footnote, so go see the original to understand what the fuss is all about. Dragonslayer, 1981. This is a real fantasy movie with wizards and castles and dragons. This is what you got in the 80s for fantasy movies before Lord of the Rings. It's about a sorcerer's apprentice who must find a way to slay a giant dragon on his own after his master dies. The tone of the film is somewhere between Willow and Conan the Barbarian. It's a little less fantastic than Willow was, not as many special effects or jokes or star power. It's mostly played straight like Conan was, with less camp and a little more realism. Like, this isn't a fantasy world with elves or dwarves or goblins. It's more closer to a King Arthur Western with Nordic aesthetics. I don't think it's poorly made, but I do wonder who the intended audience was. I think it was meant to appeal to teen boys, but maybe the expectation of the Disney brand made how dark and serious the movie was a mismatch with theater goers. It wasn't a box office success, but it was critically received well. I think it's a cool film. If you included the context of the other films that came out in 1981, it's easy to see how it would be overlooked. Clash of the Titans came out in 1981, and while the special effects of the actual dragon in Dragonslayer accounted for a quarter of its budget and was created by Star Wars maestro Phil Tippett, Clash of the Titans is the crowd pleaser. And speaking of crowd pleasers, 1980 was also the year that Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. Empire Strikes Back just the year before. It's not unfair to ask, who the hell is going to be talking about Dragonslayer? I mean, Peter MacNicol is no Harrison Ford. Peter MacNicol is our young wizard in training. He's probably best known for playing Janos Poha in Ghostbusters 2. Oh, command me, Lord! It's a neat movie, but as a wizard coming-of-age tale, it's filled with awkward moments. I think revisiting it now, out of the shadow of Conan and Raiders and Empire and Clash of the Titans, would be worthwhile if you're looking for a good quality 80s fantasy fun. Based on a Ray Bradbury story, Something Wicked This Way Comes in 1983 is the least likely to appeal to children out of all of these movies, in my opinion. But in my opinion, it's also maybe the best film on the list. Bradbury is also the screenwriter for the film, so the story of the two boys who encounter sinister forces at a carnival that comes to their town is authentic to the original vision. Both kids' performances are good, no caveats, just good performances and backed up by the magical, gentlemanly powerhouse that is Jason Robards, or sinister force of Jonathan Pryce as the evil Mr. Dark. There are a series of films, maybe a future microgenre episode, where the town is visited by an evil, often personified by one evil gentleman, representative of evil or darkness or the devil. Films like Needful Things or Dead and Buried or The Witches of Eastwick. This is another box office failure that deserved better, but I don't know what the audience is for the film. It's not flashy enough or funny at all to bring in young children, and typically movies about two little kids isn't going to attract an adult audience, which is too bad because the other side of the story is Jason Robards playing a dad who's afraid of old age, losing his strength, and those all too human insecurities.
Now, 39, fine year. Still young, 39. Oh, 40, and here you're old heart.
Dad, no! Don't listen!
Not to mention a Disney movie trying to appeal to horror film audiences with a PG movie rating is a marketing nightmare. You know what's really too bad is that we can't just enjoy these movies without our expectations getting in the way. Easily one of the most underappreciated gems in Disney's catalog, mostly considered a cult classic. It's dark. You only really need to compare it to the original Wizard of Oz. But really, you don't even need to compare it. From the opening setup of the movie, which is a direct sequel, Dorothy Gale is considered crazy and they're going to do electric shock therapy on her. It's bleak. When she gets back to Oz, everything is grown over. The yellow brick road is all ragged and everyone has been turned to stone. None of her friends are there, the Scarecrow, the Lion, or the Tin Man. Instead, she gets a new set of companions, a wind-up soldier, Tick-Tock, Jack Pumpkinhead, and a talking chicken. But all the villains in tone are much more terrifying. Princess Mumbia has a gallery of living heads that she can swap out. It's almost Sergio Argento Suspiria-like. The Wheelers are the new flying monkeys, but much creepier, maybe because they're like clowns? Walter Murch is the director, the Lucas Coppola secret weapon. Huge talent in the industry, mostly as an editor. Only directed one movie, and it was not a box office or critical success, and that's a shame, because I think he was just ahead of his time. Look at McFarlane's Twisted Land of Oz toys that came years after, and these various video games and takes on Alice in Wonderland that are all very dark and creepy. Murch was using elements from the second and third Oz novels respectively, The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz. This is one of the films to develop that coveted cult audience and following, and more so than any other in this list, and deservedly so in my opinion. Now, what would a Disney list be without at least one animated movie? Our last entry is exactly that. The Black Cauldron from 1985 wasn't a musical. There are some overtly comedic supporting characters, but the tone of the movie overall is much darker than audiences would have likely expected, and the movie was a bomb at the box office, and Disney shelved it until 1998. And that's a real shame, because it's got some really beautiful animation and imagery, and the story is engaging and adventurous. The Horned King is like a Sauron figure who's seeking the power of the cauldron, and Taran is our Bilbo, or more so like Luke Skywalker, just a little more eager for the great adventure and wide-eyed. Goody is a small dog-like monkey creature that sounds an awful lot like Gollum.
Oh, Master! Now, Goody remembers, yes. Clever, sharp-eyed Goody saw the piggy run. Yes, right through the forest. I saw it. Come!
The bad guy also kidnapped our princess, whom our Luke Skywalker finds in a prison. I know these are all just archetypal characters from fantasy and myth, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the kind of story and tone that you're going to find. The story is an adaptation of Book 3 in a series of 5 of the Chronicles of Prydain series published in the 1960s. If you doubt the darkness of the movie beyond an evil villain that was the clear inspiration for Quiller from Teddy Ruxpin,
then instruct her to show me the whereabouts of the Black Cauldron.
Well, Tweeg, now tell us, did you acquire these crystals by stealing or treachery?
What's that? Am I the only one who remembers what a Teddy Ruxpin is or would get that reference? Okay, well, how about if it was the first Disney animated movie to not secure that coveted G for general admission rating? Audiences hated the ending, and they thought it was too dark. This belongs among the ranks of the lesser-loved Disneys. Atlantis, The Lost Empire, Treasure Planet all garnered their own cult followings who swear by them, and I am one of those people. Much like Return to Oz, it fits the genre label of dark fantasy, and The Black Cauldron ends this era of Disney films. We're just a few years away from The Little Mermaid and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, putting them right back on brand. The Little Mermaid began a run of animated films including Aladdin and The Lion King, among others, and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids revitalized the gimmick comedies of the 1960s, which in recent years has brought us remakes of Herbie, Escape from Witch Mountain, among others. Join me again in the next video for another exploration into a little corner of the wide world of cinema. Click the like and follow, please, and thank you. See you next week.